Secretary Ross is with us. He'll be joining us momentarily. I'll recognize myself for an opening statement and then my friend from Maryland. The census is constitutionally required. It is what ensures that just as every vote should be counted, every person should be counted. This is a condition precedent for accurate redistricting and accurate reapportionment. The census is not only important for purposes of constituting our government, it's also important for apportioning the resources and services of our government. So the census is vitally important for a number of reasons. It is also eminently predictable. There are a few things that can be foreseen, quite like the decennial census. It happens every 10 years, whether you're ready or not. So it's incredibly important, beginning with the fundamental truth of counting every one of our fellow citizens, and we know well in advance when it's coming. So we can't complain that we were caught off guard, and we can't complain that we didn't see it. So we have a couple more years before we actually count everyone, but now is the time to make sure that we are ready to count everyone with accuracy, with security, and with professionalism. We're all concerned with cost. Our fellow citizens are hearing about cuts in a number of areas, and there's concern about the deficit and the debt. So cost is important, but it's also very important that we get this done right, accurately, professionally, with security, and in a fashion worthy of the world's great democracy. What would be even worse than unexpectedly high cost is unexpectedly high cost coupled with less than full success. So we want to make sure the census is a success. We don't appropriate money on this committee, but we do help make sure the right questions are asked in a timely fashion. So for Secretary Ross, I appreciate his time, and I appreciate the time, frankly, that he's given our committee before today, as well as his appearance today. We live in a country that is increasingly skeptical of whether or not we can get things done right, in a timely fashion, in an incredible, responsible way. I think our country as a whole, irrespective of the region in which you may live or your political ideation, would appreciate a good news story. A story of how a government entity was prepared, efficient, and exceeded their expectations. So 2020 may seem like a long ways off, but it's coming. And when it comes, we're going to have counted 300 million plus people accurately. So I think time is of the essence even today. So with that, I would welcome all of our witnesses, especially Secretary Ross, and would yield the remainder of my time to my friend from North Carolina, the chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Meadows.
Oh.
I think one thing you and I both heard today, the census is constitutionally significant. It's incredibly important for purposes of our democratic republic, counting people, apportionment, even in the apportionment of goods and services. And what I learned from you last week is this causal link between cost and compliance. The compliance numbers are going down. The cost is going up. I don't remember a lot from my childhood because it was a long time ago. I do remember the seriousness with which my parents took the census. It was almost a form of public service, maybe not to the level of jury service, but it was important. So if you accept the belief that most of our fellow citizens would like to help, particularly in an area that's constitutionally significant and important and kind of fundamental to our form of government, what are the impediments to the compliance rate? How do we reverse the trend of our fellow citizens not voluntarily complying?
Well, I can only speculate, but I'll give you a couple of thoughts on it. I think the fabric of the relationship between the public and the government has been deteriorating. I think there's less public confidence in government than there has been for a long time. And I think that's one of the problems. I think a second problem is there's so much input that comes into everyone, whether it's over social media, whether it's through the conventional media, from whatever source. I think everybody is overdosed on information flow, junk mail, the whole thing. So I think information clutter is a separate problem. And it's one of the problems even with the call center. A lot of people don't like to get incoming calls from strangers for whatever reason. And in the do not call lists have proven quite ineffective. I find, even though I've only been in government a short while, I get these robocalls on my official government cell phone. I think if we want to get response rates improved, we have to get rid of a lot of the intrusions that people find in the normal course. I was astonished to get, I would say I probably get 2 or 3 junk calls a day on my official government cell phone.
Well, we might ought to switch that number, and I'm happy to help you there if you want to get a different number. Maybe it won't help. I think you put your finger on something, the disconnect between the citizenry and the government and the lack of trust, which leads to the next 2 areas. I don't think people mind answering questions where they see the relevance. How many folks live in your household? That's directly relevant to apportionment and therefore redistricting and the provision of goods and services. I made a note, you said in response to one of my colleagues, that the more questions you ask, the lower the compliance rate is. And
Absolutely.
You use the word counterintuitive, and in fact, I think it's not counterintuitive. It makes perfect sense. The longer something takes me, the less likely I am to do it. The more intrusive I view it, the less likely I am to do it.
Right.
So I would, there are 2 things. I don't want to dwell on the community survey because it's been touched upon by a number of my colleagues. It is not lost on me that American citizens can reject a jury trial. They can reject a lawyer. They can refuse to talk to the government. They can refuse to talk to law enforcement. They can refuse to vote. It is surprising to me to see that little line at the bottom of the community survey that you can be punished for failing to tell the government how many bathrooms you have and what kind of fixtures you have. So given that you and I agree that the disconnect between the citizenry and the government is one of the reasons we have a low compliance rate, I would encourage you to be very judicious and thoughtful about what questions government does ask. And the other thing I would 2 other points, and then we're done. Cost matters. It matters, period. New paragraph. I think in lots of facets of life, we're willing to pay for quality. We do it with automobiles. We do it with sporting events. I think if you were somehow able to convince our fellow citizens that they're going to get an A-plus product, that you're not happy about the extra cost, but if they can swallow that, they'll get an A-plus product. I think it's when you get the higher cost and a substandard product that also actually feeds that disconnect. So I don't know you well. You were kind enough to come over last week. I know nothing about your background, don't even know anything about your politics. I will tell you this, you come across as an authentic person. You come across as someone that our fellow citizens would believe on an issue like this. I would encourage you to pair up with someone who has a different political ideology, whatever yours is, find somebody on the other side. And communicate to our fellow citizens, look, we get the disconnect, we're not trying to change that. It'd be really helpful to all of us as Americans, not Republicans, not Democrats, not Southerners. It'd be helpful as Americans if we got that compliance number up. It's going to save money. It's also more accurate. So I'm not talking about an ad campaign where you're on an ad at the Super Bowl, although I'm sure you'd be great. Just use the bully pulpit of being a cabinet-level official to kind of reassure our fellow citizens that you want to do it the right way and you want it to be accurate and you could use their help.
Well, I think that's very good advice, and I will try very hard to use whatever bully pulpit comes with commerce to try to achieve that.
Well, on behalf of everyone, I want to thank you, not just for today, but also the briefing you gave us yesterday. We have another panel. I know that you have other things to do, so we're going to recess and then allow the second panel to come forward. And with that, thanks on behalf of all of us for your time this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.